to that book, that perspective. And I ended it with a topic that I did really elaborate on. But back then, one of the solutions the gods had to keep these undesirables out of the surface of the world was to build a wall. And to have 100-handed warriors, who could be very armed guarding that wall. So even that, which seems very, very modern because the tale being told today, is actually a story that is hoary with age. So in a nutshell, that's my take on Area 51. I'd love to discuss it in greater depth, and I'm sure you know a lot more about Area 51 than I do.
I just, that through all the years, Area 51 originally started out through this U-2 spy plane with the CIA. And then it progressed from there to other spy planes and then into, fighters and stealth fighters and bombers. And that is what it's known for. Again, then you had Bob Lazar come back, and say that,
I remember Bob Lazar, yeah.
Yeah, and, his story has never changed for all the years. I remember listening to him on the old Coast to Coast with Art Bell, and he would get on there and he would, describe these craft, what they looked like. Of course, the only thing he was assigned to do on it was the propulsion system, to figure out how it worked. Mm-hmm. But, his story never changed. And, I do believe, and this is where people sometimes get really upset with me, Hercules. I look at our planet has been rebooted several times, undoubtedly. And,
yes.
And I look at, at one point, maybe an alien race came down to Earth, because our resources, like gold and silver, is used in electronics, probably could be used in electronics in the future, because of the way it conducts electricity and current and stuff like that. My feeling is that maybe a species of aliens came down, brought workers, to gather our resources. And the reason why I say that, if you look at the Incas, the Mayas, and all this stuff, what did they hold precious? Gold.
Right.
And when the Spaniards came, well, they went crazy because of all this gold that these, tribes or races had on our planet. And why would they have gold unless they, for some reason, were learned that it was precious? If they were mining the gold for aliens, for example, then they knew, well, this must be worth something. Because otherwise, why wouldn't they have lead and pewter and brass and copper and look at that as the same way as they were, looking at gold? And that's...
That... Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, that's an excellent theory. Zacharias Sitchin, he lent a lot of weight to that particular tale that was starting to shine through the works of von Däniken and other of the early ancient astronauts, as it was called back then, theory. And Zacharias Sitchin brought all that ancient Near Eastern obscure lore and gave a different perspective to what was written than the scholars had given it. And he opened up our eyes to all these similarities and stories throughout the globe at a much greater depth than von Däniken had originally done. So, yeah, I believe a lot of that as well. And there are similarities that I haven't seen in books, or I've seen things in books that I know as a Greek who's immersed himself in his ancestors' lore for an entire lifetime, that it's not really being translated correctly. But I love that theory as well, and I spent as much time as I possibly can furthering my knowledge of that particular perspective.
Oh yeah, I just look at the in the caves, the drawing of men on flying machines, men wearing space suits and helmets. Not just all over; it's all over the world. In Mexico, in the Amazon, everywhere. And that they didn't have TV, they didn't have internet, they didn't have newspapers, and they didn't have books. How would they know that? So how would all these different tribes around the whole world of humanoids come up with these same type of drawings? I find that so strange. I mean, it also, I'm going to say this, men to survive always has to believe in some type of God. Because if you said there was absolutely no God, then I don't think people would react in life the way they do. They wouldn't have the scruples that we have. Man has always had to believe in God, be it the fire god, the water god, the god of Jupiter, whatever. People have had to believe in some type of God. And sometimes I wonder if God was not an alien race.
That is a very attractive theory, and I've like I said, I've spent a lot of time exploring that. Other avenues that address the same material in a different way are metaphysics and occultism. In antiquity, especially during the Hellenistic era, the Greco-Egyptian era between Alexander the Great and the first few Caesars of Rome, there was a lot of intermixing of esoteric lore. And some of it was very public, although culturally biased, and other of it was kind of hidden. You had to go through initiations to become part of a priesthood to have access to this information. But a lot of it has survived if you have the time to look for it in ancient occult texts. They approach it slightly differently, and the way they approach it corresponds very highly with the UFO spiritualities that we have today, where there are beings that are not men but can appear as men, or sometimes incarnate as men, and by men I mean men and women, humanity, that are not totally physical beings. And they can see us, but we can't see them unless they choose to be seen. And these beings guide humanity in ways and guide the evolution of humanity for purposes sometimes seeming good for us, sometimes seeming ill for us, and sometimes inscrutable. But these other intelligences, and they're often associated with the planets, that's another way of looking at this whole thing with the commonalities in the art, because the ancients had shamanism, and shamanism even today is a portal into various states of mind and consciousness that aren't totally physical. And things seem very real when you transverse those areas. Like, for instance, do you remember your dreams at all?
I wish sometimes I wouldn't. Yes, I do.
Okay. Dreams are 3D experiences and sense surround that we have. It's like we have a holodeck from Star Trek inside our head. And the power of our mind to create these environments is very, very vast. And some people who believe in the simulated reality theory, that we're kind of like these intelligences and we project and create a reality similar to when you get involved in like one of those video games that people can play from different places.
Uh-huh.
You plug into a particular type of reality. So shamanism is a very early way of accessing our inner realms. And if you look at various states of consciousness, the same way you do with dreams or like fantasies or imaginings or hypnotic regressions, your brain is capable of creating these different environments. And there are environments that are private to you, like when you play a video game on your own or on your computer, and then that are shared with other people, just like when you play those games where you plug into an environment and you can interact with the other people in the theme. So shamanism was a pre-electronic way of doing that. And I'll give you a concrete example. If you read about the astral plane or the astral light, it's very much like what we now think of as the internet. which is something you have to pay to plug into, that is created that connects people. And like with the internet, the astral plane, some of the information is accurate and it's records of what happened, and some of it is fake. And so you need to be very careful when you're drawing conclusions from what you experience in the astral plane. So, in addition to the ancient astronaut theory, which I love a lot, I also love that theory as well. And since I do play with my dreams and I meditate and I experience lots of altered consciousness naturally. That's another avenue that I've been exploring as well, and it revisits the materials and has you look at it in a different way. What is quote unquote really the answer? I don't know, but both are very valid ways of examining the material and coming to some startling conclusions.
Oh yeah, I have. You talk about dreams and stuff. You know what I have done, and it took me many years of going on 68 years to do it. Is I can go to bed tonight and have a dream. Okay, mm-hmm. Then tomorrow I go to bed and I'll pick up that dream, and I can continue that dream for how long it can take 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days. I'll continue on with that dream. And I find it so interesting. And then after that dream is over with, I'll lay there and I'll think, oh my God, is the dream real? Or is the awakened state, which one is real?
Right. Yes, Shang Chu in Taoism asked himself the same question when he dreamed of a butterfly. He didn't know when he contemplated it, is he a dream of the butterfly or was the butterfly a dream that he had? And yes, if you play with your dreams, and that's an awesome gift that you have, by the way, if you play with your dreams, you have to ask yourself that question a lot, because what happens if you pay attention to them over time, or if you make like a small group and have like a dream journey type of thing, is that eventually people start having similar or the same dreams.
Interesting.
So it begs the question, if a dream, if reality is a shared experience that we can remember and refer to, and there's a commonality, what happens if you're having that experience and you're definitely not awake? How do you define reality in that context? And I haven't figured out an answer to that.
I haven't either. And you know what will happen to me too, Hercules? Sometimes I'll have these dreams, right? And then, when I kind of wake up, because I remember my dreams very vividly. Some people, like my wife, she tells me she dreams all the time. I ask her, and she goes, I really can't tell you because I don't remember. Now, maybe she doesn't want me to know what her dreams are about. But, I'll have a dream. It might continue for a day or two, and I don't like the outcome. So I'll sit there in the morning before I get out of bed, and I'm kind of like rehashing my whole dream that night and thinking about it. And then I'll go, well, you know what? I'm going to go back tonight, and I'm going to change what happens. And then I'll go through and manipulate that same dream to have it come out the outcome I think it should have had.
That is awesome.
So I don't know if you do that, but I certainly do that. And I'm sure there's other people that do that.
I do something slightly different. There is a technique developed by Jung called active imagination, and it was designed to have you interact with unconscious content. And the more you do it, the easier it is to do, and the more real it seems. But if I have a dream and I don't like the outcome, what I'll do is when I'm in a meditative state, I'll revisit the dream, and I will change the outcome, or I'll project an outcome that I want, or I'll redo it in such a way where the outcome is what I want. And when you're dealing with unconscious content, it does take several tries, to have the outcome that you want. But I've never tried it your way, but certainly I will now.
You might.
See if I have any success with it.
Okay, now Hercules, we got to go on break here. We're listening to Hercules. He does run 3 different, was it podcast or radio shows?
I was calling them radio shows, and then people started correcting me and calling them podcasts. So I don't know what the difference is, but podcast, radio shows, whatever you'd like.
Well, what I can tell you, really simple. If you do a podcast and you say something you didn't want to be in there, you can go back and edit it out. When we're doing the show live right now, it's feeding out to the radio station. So if I say something I don't supposed to say, I have to bleep it out with a button here. So